We are recording, yes.
Go ahead and get started. Well, hello everyone. I'm Haley Nolde, the new Executive Director of the Nebraska Recycling Council. We'd like to thank you so much for joining this webinar on the Nebraska Feedlot Composting Project. I'm really excited to be the new lead for NRC, and we look forward to getting to know more of you and working with you all on some of the projects that we have going on. Additionally, I'd like to thank Allison. She's in the background right now, but she's helped a lot with communication strategies and all of the media communication for the project. At the conclusion of the webinar, we'll have time for question and answer, so please put any questions you have as we go along into the question box and the little panel you see there for GoToWebinar. And then we'll also have poll questions throughout that you can participate in. We really appreciate your attendance today and look forward to your participation. So the feedlot composting endeavor was actually originally envisioned by Julie Deagle, our retired former executive director. It was funded in 2019 by the Nebraska Environmental Trust, and then when COVID hit in 2020, we ended up getting an extension to finish it out, and that brings us up to current with this informational webinar that was one of the objectives to finalize the grant. We're excited about the possibilities of using Nebraska's plentiful organic resources to create a valuable product that is highly beneficial for use in both agriculture and urban soils alike. Essentially, we first looked to analyze and document the feasibility of operating a composting operation at or near feedlots, mixing manure with local municipal lawn and wood waste, and then the marketability of that finished product for use on local cropland and or pasture land from the perspective of feedlot owners, municipalities, and farmers. And then second, we wanted to analyze the barriers and benefits of creating a compost operation from each stakeholder's point of view to identify all the possible strategies that might bring these four stakeholder groups together to produce that value-added product and improve the soil health overall. We have our first poll question coming up. Allison, if you want to pop that up.
Yes, if we could please ask you to answer this question: which of the following stakeholder groups most closely represents you? Please select one: farmer, feedlot owner, composter, municipality, or other interested party. I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay, thank you so much for your answers. Haley, the breakdown is 23% composter, 15% municipality, and 62% other interested party.
That's what I was kind of anticipating. Okay, thank you all for that. So for a little bit more background, the idea for this project came from the North Platte area. I did add that little star there just for reference of the region we're talking about. They're a private business, BioAg Solutions. They operate there making compost from animal manure from a feedlot near Hershey and then yard wastes from the municipality of North Platte. The process of making compost utilizes these organic materials that otherwise would be very problematic for both parties. This partnership is an example of a true win-win proposition. North Platte and the feed yard both have organic wastes, which are disposed, and traditional methods of disposal are anaerobic, so without oxygen. That creates methane, a powerful greenhouse gas, and then composting the material instead is an aerobic process which emits carbon dioxide. And while carbon dioxide is still a greenhouse gas, methane's global warming potential is 80 times greater than carbon dioxide. In addition, compost increases soil's ability to sequester carbon and reduces the need for costly synthetic fertilizers, the production of which also produces greenhouse gases. So Composting is definitely a positive from a greenhouse gas perspective, but in addition, composting turns this manure from a waste to an economic resource. Manure has long been recognized as a valuable nutrient for crops, but composting reduces the volume and density of that manure by about 50% or more. This reduces hauling costs, and the energy saved from hauling unnecessary weight is more than sufficient to offset the energy required to produce the compost. In addition, compost improves soil health and fertility. It increases water infiltration, which reduces runoff, and it provides nutrients over time in the soil. Nebraska's more than 2.6 million cattle on feed, which equates to nearly 90 tons of manure produced each day. So given the fact that there are so many municipalities with wood dumps and there are so many feedlots in Nebraska, putting together some information to help publicize the benefits of composting feedlot manure and this yard waste seemed like a no-brainer for us. We now have our first presentation from Aaron Hurd. Aaron, you can turn on your camera whenever if you need help. I can give you that access. Aaron's a knowledgeable and passionate advocate for soil health. He is the Natural Resources Conservation Service Soil Health Specialist in Nebraska. Soil is a living and life-giving substance, and in today's presentation, he hopes to draw some healthy connections for you to healthy soil, describing the need for improvement, allowing the soil to continue to function as a vital and living ecosystem. All agricultural producers are eligible to engage with the NRCS on this endeavor, and Aaron will present an overview of the available services offered in Nebraska. You can take it away.
Thanks a lot, Haley.
Yeah,
Everything's
of course.
working? Great.
Yep.
Excellent. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to discuss soil health with everybody today. My name is Aaron Hurd. I'm the State Soil Health Specialist for NRCS Nebraska. I've been in this position for 6 years now, and I've been involved with NRC for most of that time through a partnership discussing this project as well as the compost chapter and other things involving the city of Lincoln and other partnerships. So it's been a really great relationship, and I've been able to speak a couple times on compost and other subjects with you all. So really great to be back again. Today I wanted to talk more about understanding soil health and some just information that I thought you all would be interested in and help kind of spur some interest in investigating your soil health. So you can go ahead to the next slide. I really like to start off presentations with the definition of soil health. It's really important that we define a topic area that's kind of vague. In discussion, it's a catchy word or a catchphrase, but the NRCS has endeavored to define it, and it's the continued capacity of the soil to function as a vital living ecosystem that sustains plants, animals, and humans. I've underlined a really important aspect of this definition. The continued capacity of the soil to function is really a simplistic definition of all health in general, and your health is your continued capacity to function. So you can apply that to any organism or body of life. And soil is, we were just discussing this before the presentation, that soil is dirt with things living in it. And so it has life, and therefore it has a quantity of health that's associated with it. But we've broadened that to include all of the ecosystem services that soil provides. And so those boil down to the soil's functions. And functions of soil include things like water infiltration and storage, nutrient cycling, buffering and filtering, as well as habitat for biology. There's several others. In thinking about those functions, one of the functions that we assume the soil will perform every day is stability. If you've driven a vehicle today, you depended on the soil to remain stable. And we do that by manipulating the soil under roads and compacting it so much so that things can't live there and it can't shift or move or develop structure or infiltrate water. And so it's just a funny thing to think about how we depend on soil under our house, in our yard, under our roads. And every day we're depending on these soil functions to occur. And it's this romantic notion that they should just occur because soil exists. But in reality, we need to support those functions with our management of the soil. And so NRCS has put together these soil health principles, management principles, and they're outlined here on the bottom left. I like to start with minimizing disturbance. Nebraska is the leading state in the nation for the number of acres that are harvested annually that are installed with no-till planting systems. So harvested acres that are no-till farmed. No-tillage means that they're not pre-tilled before in the fall, or to apply fertilizer, or to condition the surface or bury residue. For any reason, there's not a tillage pass in the system prior to planting, or of course after planting. That no-till system is one of the key principles of soil health because we can stop disturbing it. So it'd be really similar to me driving a bulldozer through your house every year. By the end of the year, you might be able to repair your house and put it all back together. Well, here comes the bulldozer again every year. And then you've got to repair your house every year. So that would be a really big limitation. The next one down to the right is maximizing soil cover. No-till farming does that by default with some passive residue. Residue that's dead doesn't really care what happens to it. Residue that's alive really cares a lot about what happens to it. So maximizing soil cover means keeping dead and living cover over the soil surface. The next one is maximizing biodiversity. That includes crop rotations and expansions of what plants and animals and organisms live there. That happens by default, just by nature itself. Weeds will come in and try and increase diversity. That's an indication that we're trying to hold an ecosystem into a condition that's a monoculture or vacant or void of diversity. And so we can kind of lean into that and provide cover crops and crop rotations that will increase that biodiversity and increase the food resource to the soil. And that's the last one, providing continuous living roots. That's the only connection of the soil to its energy source, which is the sun. The only way for carbon products that are energy-packed compounds to enter into the soil medium and the soil ecosystem is through a connection to the sun through photosynthesis and plant roots, connecting the two. So keeping those living roots as long as possible or year-round really is the goal, allows an energy flow into the soil. And then I like to put integrating livestock is like greasing the wheel. So anytime that we integrate livestock or livestock products like manure and compost, composted manure, it's like priming the pump. It's honestly the most generous way that you can benefit the ecosystem and allow for it to proliferate and become abundant. So when we do that first step, we apply those principles, then you can see the compounding and cascading results of those going up in that circular fashion across. That's the work of cover crops. That's the work of soil health management, and I've defined it that way with it on the blue arrows there. But you can see the work pays off in a lot of different benefits. And one of the last benefits is an increase in yield and lowering of costs. And so that is the primary way by which soil health is measured. And we at the NRCS are working to help work with farmers to measure the impacts of soil health management on the go. And so that's the main gist of the work that I'm emphasizing for NRCS and how we interact with farmers. And everybody, including everybody on this call, can be a participant with advice and assistance from the NRCS. So you can go to the next slide. So the work that needs to be done in Nebraska, we need to eliminate this tillage-induced root restrictive compaction layer. Every soil that's seen a piece of metal move through it has a compaction layer below where by nature of that tillage equipment, even a rototiller or tire traffic causes compaction. But the cutting of soil, the shearing process of a blade moving through soil causes torque and tension on the soil particles that cause it to compact, and that compaction results in higher density. And density of soil is what dictates whether a root can move through it. So the root restriction of those compaction layers is induced by tillage. And so that is a problem on 21 million acres, basically in Nebraska, of cropland and beyond, because of compactive activities. And we can't get rid of that completely on cropland, but we can alleviate it, or we can regenerate it annually with roots proliferating through that layer. And what I really like to point out is that blue arrow shows how that cover crop root managed to go straight through there. And so if you go to the next slide, this is a chart by USDA that shows the bulk densities, the density of the soil that restricts or limits root growth. So the ideal bulk density is there in the left column. The bulk density that sort of affects or slows down root growth is in the middle, and then the densities that restrict root growth is there on the right. And most of the soils that are in this area are silt loams, silty clay loams. And so I've circled that just for ease of honing in on the ones that matter. And you can see the bulk density that restricts our cash crop roots from moving through the soil is 1.65 grams per cubic centimeter. So if we keep track of that number, 1.0 is the density of water, and 1.33 is our engineering standard of soil. That's half soil and half air. So it's a 50-50 blend. So when we're above that 1.33, we're denser than our standard density. And you can see there in the image that's partnered with this chart that the top of that tillage-induced root restrictive compaction layer is typically found to be around 1.9 grams per cubic centimeter. That's extremely dense soil, and it stops every density, all the roots across all of the soil textures. You see in that right-hand column, the sandy loams can be as high as 1.8 before they restrict root growth. So that's a really big problem, and it's the largest agronomic issue, widespread issue, consistent issue worldwide, restricting productivity in our agronomic systems. And it's the work of cover crops. It's the work that we need to do for our soil health and primarily for water infiltration. So we can go to the next slide. That's what we support through these conservation practices, and RCS can work with farmers, ranchers, growers. The mandate for financial assistance is that you would make a certain amount of money valued in product annually. So if you're growing a garden and benefiting from that personally, if you can document that amount of value, then you're an eligible participant for cost share. But we can honestly just give you advice on how to grow cover crops and different opportunities with hoop houses or weed barrier, mulches, compost, biochar, and I've listed a few here. Cover crops is our primary opportunity to affect change in the soil. We can do a soil health testing activity with participants and take some lab tests to analyze where you're at today. And then soil carbon amendment, that's why we're here. We're talking about compost and composted manure. It needs to be mature compost to qualify for this. So that is a really big ask, and it's a high level to accomplish. We can also apply biochar or wood chips. And so we would want to come out to your farm and do a soil health resource concern assessment. That's a new form that we've developed in recent years. And so there's the new stuff. So next slide. Cover crops, some different pictures of cover crops and agronomic systems. If you're a farmer, there's lots of different ways to install these cover crops and lots of different reasons. We like to hone in on the reason: feed, erosion control, compaction, Next slide. Do cover crops sequester nitrates? I've had the opportunity to work with Jeremy Millander, an extension educator from the Norfolk area, and some research that he put together for me outlines that a 2016 and 2017 study with 2 locations at Meade and Concord, Nebraska, in a corn soybean rotation and also a continuous corn rotation with cover crops, that those rotations decreased the soil nitrate levels with cover crops. And so that was measured after the cover crop was terminated in the spring or by frost kill in some situations. And so obviously a growing plant is going to use nitrates that are available to it to grow. And so that was captured statistically and really supported by that. What was really cool is he went on to explain that this Iowa study found that a rye cover crop after termination began to release that nitrate back to the soil in around the June timeframe. And that's a pretty neat return on the investment, sort of, where it's a slow release nitrate source, and we can put that back into the ecosystem through rotting and benefit the cash crop the next season after we've scavenged the residual nitrogen. That's a common practice that I recommend in gardens as well, across urban sectors and in all sorts of circumstances where we have disturbed soil. There's a release of nitrates from dead organisms, and we can scavenge that nitrogen and put it into a plant residue. So you can kind of see some comparison photos there and some novel landscape appearances to what that means ecologically. And you can see that we have a runoff from that field that's carrying potentially some soil nitrates with it. So next slide. Compost and manure work with other management activities in the soil. Like I said, it's like greasing the wheels. But when we do apply animal manure to soils through a project with UNL, they've documented that you can reduce crusting and improve soil water retention, and thereby reduce ponding, erosion, and runoff. Those are all functions of the soil that are directly impacted by the use of composted manure, compost in general, or manure byproducts. And when used properly, they can be a really great asset to your soil ecosystem. So next slide. I always say, though, that it often takes a team to improve soil health. So all things in moderation, but all things work together for good too. And when we combine cover crops and compost or composted manure together, then there's a lot of synergy in that relationship. And organic in manure is less likely to be lost to the environment, especially if it's sequestered or utilized by a growing cover crop. That even increases the efficiency beyond the difference between organic in and applied in or synthetic in. Manure feeds soil microbes that source carbon and nitrogen. So just like Haley pointed out, it's really good for sequestering those compounds in the soil, and it improves a lot more functions than just what meets the eye. So it supports plant life and other organisms, like that white fungus that you can kind of see in the top right photo. That's saprophytic fungus that's just super interested in decomposing the rotting materials in that soil. So when we're supporting life, we're supporting soil structure and the functions of soil. Next slide. We can go along with you on your learning curve or your journey through soil health, and we can offer cost share to decrease that risk. I would always suggest stopping by our local NRCS offices that are found in almost all counties in Nebraska and in every state in the nation. Inquire about the opportunities that they can work with you to understand conservation and understand how to improve soil health on the land that you manage. Next slide. I always like to point out our partnership with UNL. UNL has been a really great partner in communicating the results of soil health management in Nebraska. And this website, cropwatch.unl.edu, is where a lot of information can be found. We have a soil health initiative landing page at this location, and I think it's really awesome that UNL has stepped forward to communicate this to farmers and the public in general. There's case studies and articles and address common problems and hot button issues that are kind of on the new and emerging technology of soil health management. So go ahead to the next slide. I always like to leave with this question: how can you improve soil health? Dig a hole and learn a lot. Most folks have not actually looked at soil, like dug it and looked into it in a long time, maybe since you were a child. That childlike interest or curiosity can lead to a lot of learning, and just getting in there and seeing that restrictive layer, that compaction layer break apart there at 6 inches, it's just eye-opening. And you can find that almost everywhere you go in a crop field, or even in your garden. You can find that in lawns where there's been tire traffic or any sort of past disturbance. And it's really intriguing to see the roots move horizontally at that layer and create an issue with productivity and water infiltration and all sorts of downstream effects of that layer. We can address those with those soil health principles and manage out of that and help the soil improve itself. And it's a lot like therapy for the soil, sort of. And then it gets well, and then it begins to function and really be a benefit to the ecosystem and environment at large. So it's really important that we do that. The next slide, I think, is my non-disclaimer or non-discrimination statement. And then you can flip to my contact information.
Thank you. Every time we feature you, it's like just more information.
That's awesome. I really appreciate your time. I hope I didn't go too long over.
No, it's all good.
Really
That was
appreciate the
excellent.
opportunity to present. If you do have any questions, feel free to email me or call me. You can follow NRCS Nebraska on that Twitter handle, and we do post a lot of photos there and links to helpful information from our partners. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, Aaron. That was awesome. I believe next up we have a couple poll questions. If Allison, you want to pop those up for us?
Yes, and I apologize, I didn't share visually the results with the first one. I'm going to do that moving forward, just so you know, Haley.
Okay.
So here's the second question. Which of the benefits do you feel is greatest? I'm sorry, greatest got cut off somehow. Please select one: improved soil quality and moisture retention, public perception of environmental benefit, preventing soil erosion, or reducing carbon emissions. Just a few more moments. Almost everyone has voted. Okay. This is the results. 77% said improved soil quality and moisture retention, 15% said public perception of environmental benefit, and 8% said preventing soil erosion. And then we have one more question for you right now. Do you think farmers are willing to make an investment in soil health? Please select one. There's 4 different options: yes, and one saying no. So please answer that question as well for us. Oh, just a few more moments. Okay, these are the results of that question. 23% said yes, they'll buy compost. 31% said yes, but they'll need no cost option. 38% said yes, but they need an incentive, and 8% said no, no long-term benefit of improved soil on leased land. So there you go. Back to
Excellent.
you, Haley.
Thank you. Really interesting. Let me make sure my screen is sharing. Okay. Thank you all for sharing your opinions with us. It is very useful. Next, we will have Joey. Joey, whenever, if you'd like to show your camera, we discovered that there are a few commercially successful composters in Nebraska, but one of the problems we identified early on in the project was we needed to understand the needs of the market, so the farmers. Also, it was recognized that the other stakeholders would all have their own unique perspectives. So to help understand the barriers and benefits from each of these stakeholders, we worked with Action Research. They were awesome. They are a company that specializes in community-based social marketing. This approach is utilized by many public health and environmental agencies to understand and bridge the gap between academic research and then the real world applications to promote some more sustainable communities. Joey is here with us and will join us to explain their work and their findings based on the interviews they did with Nebraska stakeholders. And Joey, I can pop your slides up for you.
Great.
There you go.
All right, yeah, thanks for that introduction. So yeah, we are here to share the results of our interviews and conversations we had with the key stakeholders. So on the next slide, we just have a quick intro about what we do at Action Research. So we apply marketing and social science research to outreach programs that promote safe, healthy, and sustainable communities. And we really have that behavioral focus. So we follow the community-based social marketing process. And on the next slide, we have a lot of different domains that process applies to, all related to different behaviors within each of these. So we work on topics from waste and recycling, pollution prevention, conservation, to agriculture. We've worked on this project. We've done some research with legacy landowners in Virginia on legacy planning and how to pass on their forested lands to their next of kin to make sure that they stay forested for the long term to really preserve that ecosystem. So we're really excited about this type of work. On the next slide, I have this kind of primer because we focus on behavior, and a lot of times agencies that Haley mentioned, the public agencies, they go directly to, we need to send out a bill insert to tell people something, or we need to put up a billboard to tell them something. And the research from the social sciences is very clear that knowledge and awareness, information intensive methods are not effective by themselves to changing behavior. So essentially under knowledge, if people just knew what to do, they would do that. But knowledge doesn't necessarily translate to behavior change. Awareness, if people just knew how bad things were, they would change their behavior. But the attitudes don't necessarily translate into behavior change. And you can think of this in your own lives. You need to go to the gym. You know how going to the gym is important. You're aware that gyms exist, but you don't go as often as you should. There's a lot of different things that this applies to. On the next slide, I've got a quick example that everybody's probably familiar with. So the 5 a Day campaign. This was an old campaign back from in the 90s from the National Cancer Institute, and it was really trying to promote that fruit and vegetable consumption is important and tell people you need 5 servings a day. You've got to eat them, you've got to do that. It's really important for your health. So on the next slide, we've got the comparisons. So they had a baseline knowledge of 7% of how many servings of fruits and vegetables that you need to eat. They ran their whole campaign, there were ads, there was the food pyramid, all of that kind of stuff. which was great. It increased knowledge of the 5 a day up to 20%. But if you see on the right there, actual consumption of 5 servings of fruits and vegetables did not change at all. It
Wow.
was 11% pre and it was 11% post. So it really shows that knowledge and awareness don't necessarily translate into specific behavior changes. So from there, we have on the next slide the community-based social marketing process. And this is the thing that we follow along most often in most of our projects. So community-based social marketing is a process, it's not a tactic. And I have a little bit ahead of this, the different steps. But here, it has its origins in behavioral and social sciences, so psychology, sociology, anthropology, behavioral economics, all that kind of stuff. And it is community-based. So what works in one area may not work in another. So it's really important to get down to that community level to talk to the specific people that you're interested in changing their behavior. And the main focus, as Haley mentioned earlier, is on removing those barriers and enhancing the benefits to the target behaviors that you want people to do. And these barriers and benefits, importantly, are different at the level of every individual behavior. So you can't just tell people to reduce water consumption. Taking shorter showers has different barriers and benefits than watering your yard less. So you really have to take those all into consideration. So on the next slide, we have the overall process for community-based social marketing. This is up and coming, and a lot more agencies are starting to use this in their processes. We do a lot of stormwater work, and out here on the West Coast, I'm in California, a lot of the regulatory boards are starting to write into the permits that people have to use community-based social marketing. It's evidence-based, and it's evidence-based at the behavioral level rather than just the output level. So how many flyers did you put out? Good job. How many likes did you get on Facebook? Good job. That's not enough. You need to show we reduced water consumption this much. We increased composting this much. And community-based social marketing gets at that. So the overall process contains 5 steps, the first of which is the important one. It's selecting the right behavior. And like I said, you can't just kind of have a broad-based behavior and throw it out there. You really need to get specific. Then once you've got your barriers or your behaviors in mind, you move to your barrier and benefit analysis. So you talk to your community, you figure out what makes it easy and what makes it difficult to engage in the behavior that you want. Then you move on to developing strategies. So these are where we pull from the behavioral and social sciences to utilize the tools that have been well researched for decades about changing behavior. And there's various tools that you can use depending on your specific barriers and benefits. So for example, if you're trying to get somebody to do a repetitive action like turning off the lights when they leave a room, a prompt is going to be really great for that. So those little stickers that you see by the lights. It reminds you every time because people forget. That's the #1 barrier, forgetting that they need to turn off their lights. An incentive, on the other hand, is another strategy that you could use if cost is an issue. So you wouldn't want to incentivize people to turn off a light every time because you're going to have to sustain that over time. You're going to have to pay people every time they turn off the lights. And importantly, you could actually undermine their intrinsic motivation to do that if you start paying people. So it's really important to have that knowledge of the research foundations of each of these tools, because if you use them incorrectly, they could actually backfire. So it's important to keep that in mind. And once you've got a comprehensive strategy together, the next step is to pilot test it. And that is taking a small subsection of your population, having a treatment and a control group, one that doesn't get anything and then one that gets your messaging, like with the 5 a day campaign before and after, that kind of stuff that you can see. I delivered my program, there was change. I did not deliver my program, there was no change, so that my program is effective. This is really important in particularly water consumption. So right here in California, we're going through a drought, and there are starting to be watering restrictions put in place that you can't water every day of the week. If we were to launch our water saving program today, and then July 1st, water restrictions go into place, but we don't have that treatment or control group, then it looks like our program was great. Everybody reduced their water consumption. You really don't have that comparison to draw back to. So that's kind of where the research end comes in. Then if your program is effective, you implement it broadly and you continue to evaluate, make changes, but if it's successful, take it to other audiences that would be benefiting from it. So that's a high-level overview of community-based social marketing. I have a quick case study, just a couple slides that can show you in practice how this works. The project that we have here with the composting is kind of in its initial stages. So this program will really show you kind of how it could go. So first up, this was a project for curbside recycling in Fort Worth, Texas. And the goals of the program were to increase recycling and reduce contamination. So there was things in the trash that should be in the recycling bins. So we went out and did waste audits. So we went through people's bins and figured out what they were throwing away and what they were recycling and what should be different. So from that, the focus was determined to be mixed paper. Because 87% of trash cans had mixed paper in it, but that should be in the recycling bins. So on the next slide, we have the next step, which is identifying those barriers and benefits. So we conducted a survey. So all the people that we went to their house, did the waste audits, we developed a survey that ported over the data that we found and asked them the specific questions. So we saw a lot of junk mail. So we asked them, what makes it difficult to recycle junk mail? And interestingly, the top issues were privacy concerns and then some confusion about shiny paper, plastic windows and everything. But really, people have their name on their junk mail that they're getting from credit card companies and all that kind of stuff. And there was this perception that recycling is less secure than the trash because people can get it, it's not bagged, they could see your name if they just kind of go in your recycling bin. People aren't really doing that, but perceptions are reality in terms of barriers and benefits. Then for the benefits, for the environment, it's the right thing to do, those kinds of things. So on the next slide, the strategy that we developed really utilizes the social norms. So most people think that recycling is important. They want to do the right thing. There was some confusion about shiny paper, window paper. So education, knowledge, awareness is important. It just can't be the only thing that you're focusing on. So we developed a program that kind of highlights that information. Then, because people were concerned about their names, we gave them a big, thick black marker that they could cross out their names to kind of alleviate that issue. So I don't have it in this presentation, but the pilot testing phase was these were blanketed, they were delivered, and then it was measured at the recycling truck level to see if there was a difference in weights for the different bins. So on the next slide, we have, again, this community-based social marketing process. And for this specific composting program, we went through selecting behaviors, the barriers and benefits, and then started kind of dabbling into the strategies. So on the next slide, this just shows that while it is kind of a process that has 5 separate steps, it's not linear. And as you kind of go into the next step, you may need to go back to the other one and kind of refine from there to see how you can continually improve, because something might come up in your barriers and benefits that you didn't think about in terms of the behaviors originally, so you kind of need to continuously evaluate. And you will see a little bit of that in the results that I present shortly. So on to this specific composting research effort. So in terms of the process, we started at the very beginning with a literature review, kind of seeing what was out there in terms of composting projects, seeing what other agencies were doing, all that kind of stuff. From that, we then went to Nebraska. Me and my coworker were there, and we had in-person meetings with the core project advisors, some of the stakeholders, the feedlots. We went to a feedlot and saw the large piles of compost and everything. It was a really exciting experience. Then from that, we took that knowledge and we developed interviews with this for the stakeholder groups, and then we ended up conducting those interviews. And those stakeholder groups were the same we talked about: the feedlots, the municipalities, the composters, the farmers. So we held interviews with all of these groups, and on the right there we have the number. So we talked to 5 feedlots, 10 municipalities, 4 composters, 7 farmers, for a total of 26 interviews. So overall, the interviews, just kind of a quick background, we had questions that were specific to each group. So we didn't ask the composters and the municipalities the exact same questions, but in general, we asked them about their current operation. So what they were currently doing at their property. So if it's a municipality, what are they doing? If it's a feedlot, what are they doing? Then we asked them, we gave them just a short one-pager kind of overview of the project as intended. And then we asked them a series of questions to get at their perceived barriers to participating in the project as described, and then similarly benefits. Then at the very end, we just sort of gauged their general participation interest. How would you like to participate in this if it were executed as described? So we have the results here, and these are, again, high-level results. There's plenty in the specific report that we provided, but overall, interest in the program part was really high, and most people were generally supportive. I think there was only one person who wasn't particularly interested in participation. There was some general confusion of the roles and responsibilities based on how it was currently laid out. So it's going to be really important to really define the specific roles for each stakeholder group going forward. There was some unsureness of what exactly you're asking me to do, so that needs to be defined. And that really kind of hits at that behavior selection step, that number 1. We really need to start getting more concrete of, okay, this is exactly what I'm asking you to do. So cost is going to be a determining factor, and we saw that in the poll results a couple slides back, that many of you thought that an incentive was going to be needed. So it needs to be economically viable, and importantly, it's going to be important to ensure that it stays viable into the future. For farmers, the cost of the compost needs to be comparable to that of commercial fertilizer. That was definitely something that came up in the interviews. And then funds might be required to help offset that initial kind of setup cost issue. So maybe equipment help or help with materials, training, transportation definitely came up a couple times throughout the interviews, the cost for transportation. So we're going to need to ensure that materials will be consistently available. And this is both the inputs for the composting and the outputs of the composting, so that it can be sold to help offset some of those startup costs. It's going to be important to build partnerships. This was discussed several times throughout the interviews. Partnerships will help support the demand for compost going on long term. And then also possible equipment sharing partnerships could help offset some of those costs in terms of materials needed or setup costs. So that will help alleviate some of those financial burdens. It's also going to be important to address contamination. This came up a couple times, and there was a perception that yard waste from the general public is going to be contaminated. And we did have some conversations around this in those initial conversations when we were in Nebraska, that there are screens and things that kind of take that out, magnets to pull out things, but there is still this perception that it's going to be contaminated. So there's going to need to be kind of visual demonstrations of it's not. We've got processes in place to help alleviate that issue. And then we're going to need to show that compost is more beneficial. There was a general belief that manure by itself was sufficient and that true composting won't be that much better, particularly for those that were using kind of a in-between of manure and compost, a conditioned manure. So there's some misperceptions around that will be important to address through this program. On the next slide, I have just a couple of notable quotes. I definitely think from an environmental perspective that this is something that would be very beneficial to the cattle industry. Forming partnerships with the private sector is always good for the community, good thing to support local businesses. We've composted a lot of manure over the years. Seeing more of that would be great, and it's an easy adjustment to our process. I'm all about the environment. That's what farmers do. Well, not all of them, the good ones do. So I thought that was a fun one to end on. So on the next slide, I've just got contact information. So I'll be sticking around for the Q&A. So if you do have any questions, let me know. But that is our website and my email there. These are a couple of people who have worked on the process, on the program throughout the project. So
Thanks, Joey.
there you go.
You're the best. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. I think we have a poll question now. Allison, do you want to
Yes.
throw that up for us?
Yes. Which of the barriers do you feel would be most difficult to overcome? Cost of compost, availability of trash-free organics for composting, perceived long-term value of compost versus short-term cost, concerns from community members about odor or other risk, or high capital cost of composting business. Okay, let's see the results here. 20% said cost of compost, 20% also said availability of trash-free organics, 30% said perceived long-term value of compost versus short-term risk, 20% said concerns from community members about odor or other risk, and 10% said high capital cost of composting business. So
Sure, pretty spread out there.
yes.
Okay. Back to the presentation. Thanks, Allison. Next, we'll feature Kyle Temple. He's a natural resources tech with the Middle Niobrara Natural Resources District. He's going to tell us about the project they've implemented over the last several years to utilize eastern red cedar wood chips and animal manure on field plots. They have a pretty interesting business model of sharing equipment with different producers to help keep those costs, the capital costs down that we've been talking about, and then how to make that process more affordable. Kyle, I'm going to make you the presenter now so you're able to share your pictures.
Okay, thank you, Haley.
Of course. We greatly appreciate you being here. I know we've hit you up a lot to share your information.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay. You should be able to present now. Perfect.
Can you guys see those?
Yep. If you just want to, yep, perfect. Awesome.
All right, not a super fancy presentation here. I've just got some pictures included with kind of like Haley talked about. I just wanted to give you guys a basic overview. Have they seen the case study that you guys put together, Haley?
Some of them will have, some not.
Okay. Well, I'll just kind of hit on some of the topics of that. Like Haley
Sure.
said, my name is Kyle with the Middle Niobrara NRD here in Valentine, Nebraska. We're a watershed-based conservation district located, like I said, out of Valentine. Our district covers basically from Bassett all the way over to Gordon, and then north of the North Loop River, mainly consisting of sand hills and some of that hard grass prairie that's typical of southern South Dakota, northern Nebraska. We have just kind of started in the last 5 years to dip our toes into the composting parts of these deals. But 10 years ago, we had a big fire come through a couple portions of our district that burned up a lot of forest ground, river ground. And following that, we went through and bought a Vermeer 1800 wood chipper to help landowners get rid of fire burned trees and clean up damage associated with those couple fires. That was like I said, a Vermeer 1800 chipper. We upgraded to the 2100 in 2014, which is able to handle a 21-inch tree. And since then, in those two, between those two chippers, we've created about 2,200 tons of wood chips. And so
Wow.
that kind of is how we got started in the composting realm. Was our need to one, kind of help landowners clean up from our 2012 fires, but then also kind of help alleviate eastern red cedar encroachment that guys are dealing with across good portions of our district. You know, most of those cedars that get cut just get piled and burned, and so we've been, over the last 10 years or so, been chipping a lot of those piles and using them for all sorts of different kind of projects, using them on trails and roadways. Been using them on fields and blowouts and little projects like gardens and things like that as well. And so basically what kind of come of that is we got a grant in 2016 to buy a compost turner, and we started working with some of our local farmers. Here in the last 10 years or so, the organic crop market has gotten very big up here, especially of our sandy soils. A lot of guys are going over into no-till, organic corn, soybeans, feed, things like that. And so guys are looking for all sorts of different ways to keep clicking through. All sorts of different ways to provide fertilizer for their fields that doesn't come in the form of a synthetic nitrogen or anything like that, a commercial fertilizer. And so lots of guys are turning to compost, manure, things like that to amend our, for one, our very sandy soils. Most of our district is made up of Valentine fine sands and sandy loams, things like that. Like I said, 2016, we got a compost turner pictured here. We worked with a couple different landowners on some different test plots for doing some hog manure, sheep manure, beef manure, things like that, and mixing them with the wood chips we've already had, and trying to make a beefed up compost while also finding a product, a usage for the wood chips that we've made over the years. 2,200 tons of wood chips. If you don't know what that looks like, the picture here in front of me is about 2 to 3 tons, and so we've got lots and lots and lots of wood chips. Trying to find a home for them and a use for them. And so we worked with Danielski Farms and Coinsen Farms, Greg Wilkie Farms, doing some little projects there. Some of the things that come out of it we saw was a increase in soil moisture retention. Guys were able to make less rounds with their pivots, and that sand was able to hold a little bit more water. Really saw an increase in organic material buildup, and guys were able to hold on to some of that on the non-organic fields. Guys were able to hold on to some of that synthetic fertilizer a little bit longer, keep it up there in the root zones to where the crops can use it. And then we saw a little increase of 5 to 10 bushel increase in their yields as well. And so those were just 2 quick little projects we kind of went through and did in like that 2016, 2017 range. We ended up partnering with these guys to use some of their equipment. We started out with just that, like I said, just that compost turner and that wood chipper. And so we were borrowing tractors and bigger equipment to pull and utilize that equipment we got. 2018, 2019, we started working with UNL, kind of like Aaron had talked about. We started working with UNL in their waste to earth project, working on compost and cedar mulch applications, kind of similar to what we had started in 2016, 2017. I think they had 7 sites or so across the state of Nebraska. We supplied them with a portion of the manure that they needed, and then all of the wood chips they had utilized. And at that point in time, we had kind of figured we were ready to kind of step up into the next realm of things. And we got a grant, purchased our own tractor, dump trailer, and manure spreader, the manure spreader you see here. And then this Case 210 CVT pictured here on the front. And like you guys had talked about cost, this tractor here used was $170,000. The compost turner was $80,000. The dump trailer was $25-30, somewhere in that range, and the manure spreader was, oh gosh, 60 or 75, I think. And so
Wow.
had to work through quite a few grant opportunities, a lot of some landowner involvement, and worked with some other good companies to help get all this equipment purchased. 2019 come around, we got a grant through Department of Environment, what used to be DEQ, now DEE, through their litter and waste reduction. We got a $40,000 grant to do some research trials and some composting with some of our local landowners. We went through that grant and composted a couple different types of manure and some old moldy hay, some other waste products, and then more of our wood chips. I think that grant ended up, we ended up composting 300 to 400 tons of waste products and turning it into some different soil amendments. See, at that point in time, we went through with a local landowner and set up 9 test plots and did some different mixtures, ratios, waste products, compost products, things like that, trying to see one, is how much is enough to make a difference, and how much is, can be too much. Like Aaron had talked about compaction a little bit. This landowner was a big no-till guy, and worried about some of his compaction in the soils, dragging that manure spreader back and forth so many times. And so what we ended up doing is we did 9 different test plots of 6 ton an acre and 3 ton an acre, and then some mixtures of 80%, 20%, 60-40, and then some individual plots of manure and eastern red cedar wood chips as well. We just finished wrapping that project up last year, and really had some nice results come out of it. You can see some of the compost we went through and made here. You can see, like this picture on the left, how much moisture that those wood chips are adding to that compost. We didn't have to water it nearly as much as we had on other composting projects, just because of the moisture retention that those wood chips provided. There's just some more pictures composting. Like I said, big equipment, big spendy equipment. We went through and placed soil moisture probes in all of our test plots. One of the big things here is with our sandy soils, water and fertilizer leaches very quickly. 7/500 to an inch of rain disappears within hours, or days, if not hours, up here. And so one of the big goals for this project was to figure out how, one, we can reduce irrigation and input costs and hold some of that soil moisture within those fields. Some pictures mid-season, you can see the soil moisture sensors off in the background there. And then some of the results on the back end. We just finished up with this, and we're still kind of going through our post soil sampling and long-term goals of the projects, but just some short goals here on the backside. You can see our 9 different plots here on the left, and the different mixtures and ratios that we went through it. And then you swing over there to the right, and you can see the differences in yields. That little bump in yields there, and the 3 ton an acre, the 6 ton an acre of just pure 100% manure compost, 9 bushels an acre, which at $7.50 corn, really makes a difference. 6 ton an acre of 80/20 compost wood chips, 15 bushels an acre there, and then variable all the way through 3 ton an acre of just 100% wood chips provided a 9 bushel an acre increase. And then one of the other things, like I talked earlier, one of the goals the landowner had was to reduce his need and usage of commercial fertilizer, which looking back 2 years ago, looking at fertilizer prices now, he was really on the ball and on his game with his input costs here. And so we cut, not only did he see an increase in yields in a lot of his different plots, but he was also able to cut his fertilizer usage, his commercial fertilizer usage in half in these plots, while still at least keeping, if not gaining, bushels out of that field. And so it was a really promising trial. We really would like to go back through and do it again. Hopefully, I think we're going to probably try and go through and put in another application with DE to run some more of these trial plots and keep showing and keep pushing the benefits of compost and wood chips and the mixture of them both. I think that's probably the end of my pictures. I think that's about all I've got. And so
Great, thank you. Yeah, I don't think we've heard a bad thing about your guys' operation, so it's a model of success for sure. I will take away presentation mode from you and jump back on. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see my slide.
Yes.
Okay, and I think we're just going to jump right into a poll question quick. Getting wrapped up with presentations here.
Do you think your community or area would be interested in a project like the Middle Niobrara Wood Chip Project? Please select one. About 10 more seconds. Thank you for all that have voted already. Okay. We have 67% said yes, would need shared equipment. 17% said yes if there was an incentive, and 17% said no, don't want wood chips on the fields. Thank you all.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Alrighty. So our last presenter, a little bit different type of presentation, will be from Jean Waters. She's a sustainability consultant who has helped us extensively on this project. She created a financial tool for businesses getting started in feedlot and municipal yard waste composting. One of the barriers we knew that would exist right from the start is the cost barrier, and we've talked about it the whole way through this. And it's how it's very capital intensive business to have all the equipment needed for commercial composting. So transportation costs are also a consideration, even more so now with the current price of fuel, and the cost of feedstock is also a concern. And then the price that can be charged for compost is limited. So to help people get their arms around all of these costs, Jean created a set of financial spreadsheets, which were put into a database that will be able to be accessed from our website at the Nebraska Recycling Council. And Jean now will walk us through how to use that application. And it should be a good way to test the specific scenarios for different individuals' situations. Jean, if you want to pop on whenever, start your slides.
Okay, I clicked it. There it goes.
There we go.
I clicked
Perfect.
the camera button too many times. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be with you today. I'm Jean Waters, and glad to be here to talk about this Nebraska Feedlot Composting project. It's really fun for me. I got to be with Julie when she was thinking about it and the concept and everything. So I've been able to be involved with it the whole time, and it's been a lot of fun. I think it's got a lot of opportunities. So we'll just jump right in because thank you all for staying this long. So this slide that we have right here, this is the website on the Nebraska Recycling Council. They have a project page for this feedlot composting project, and that's what it looks like. In the blue box, you'll see that we highlight some of the main advantages of composting. Always want to show the benefits right from the beginning so that people will remember what those are. So one of the things that we knew from the beginning, like Haley said, cost is an issue. And what we really want is for these composting projects to become businesses so that they'll be sustainable for the long term. So next slide, please. You scroll a little bit further down this website, you'll see some of these pictures from Kyle, and we've got a couple of case studies posted on this website as well. But the thing that I want to start you with, I'm going to talk to you about the financial tool, and the thing I have circled here is the composting project checklist. So if you go to the next slide, if you click on that, you'll get this 4-page document that lists all of the variables that we want you to have as you use the financial analysis tool. There's a lot of information, and we ask about equipment costs, fuel usage, what you're going to spend on the raw materials, what you might be able to get paid for to take raw materials from the municipalities or the feed yards. So all of these different variables you need to have, and that's what is listed here on this checklist. Okay, next slide. And once you have all that data, then click here to access the tool and get started. See, on the next slide, when you click on to access the tool, you'll get this website. I did circle up at the top, it's not secure, but that's not to worry. There's no confidential information or credit card information used on the website, so we don't have to have an SSL certificate, and so that's why it says it's not secure, but it's the right website, it's the good stuff, so don't be alarmed by that. There's this menu across the top here. It says home, start here, create a project, update a project, reports, and frequently asked questions. So once you've filled in your data, you kind of know your data, then you can click on the start here button. Now the start here will take you to, oh, next slide. This takes you to there we go, the steps that you're going to do, just trying to set the stage and your expectations. This takes a little bit of time to do this, to fill all this out. So we want you to look at this example that we have below, watch this short video, which we are going to play for you here in a minute, and then get your resources and your information ready, and then you can create a project. So there's a tab on this website to create a project. So let's go on and let's do the video.
Okay. Let me pull it over for you.
Okay. So this is the actual video that's on this website, and I'm just going to talk you through it. If you want to go ahead and start
Playing it now, Jean.
Okay. So this video is going to show you step by step what to do. So like I say, the first thing you'll do is to create a project. And then when you're at the create the project, this window will open for you to create a user ID and a password and a project name. Now those are just whatever makes sense to you. We don't, it doesn't matter what you use for your user ID and so forth. So just put that stuff in there, and then that identifies the set of data that you're entering. So then you submit that. And then you'll log in using these credentials that you just created. And so you'll enter your username and your password and log in. Hit that button, and then you'll be ready to start entering your data. So this is the data that is on that little spreadsheet I told you to download. That is what you're going to be entering here. But now when you're entering it here, this is entering into the interface that will connect to the database on the back end. So all this project checklist data, you're going to put it in here. Now you'll see that some of this stuff is pre-populated, like as we get down to the financial sources information. We just put in some example information there, but you should put in the information that applies to you, or as close as you can. So that'll give you a better result. Like right here, we're changing the owner equity, so the amount that you're investing into the business and how much you may get from the grant and how much you have to borrow from the bank. And as you do that, you can see down below the resulting loan outcomes. All of that information changes. So even as you're going through entering your data, some things are being calculated right here on the page. And then those will be used later in the database as well. One of the important things is kind of this quirk of the software. You have to select fiscal year 2 and fiscal year 3. You have to select those in those drop downs in order for that to, then your resulting financials will be for 3 fiscal years. Then the next part is your basic production values. How many tons per month of compost that you're going to make. And that's not the finished compost, but the raw compost, and then the screening comes after that. You can change the selling price, the amount of sales that you plan to increase every year. Right now, the video is showing just some basic financial stuff, and again, you can change all of these. They're just pre-populated so that there'll be numbers there and that it will work. We tried to be reasonable about the information going into it, but it should be, you should put in the numbers that you have. Your equipment will cost different than our guess at the equipment costs. Then there's these project assumptions. So if you have any assumptions that you may be having for your market or for the performance or the sales or operations, any assumptions that you're making, be sure and record those there, and then those will show up in your final report. And so then that will help you if you do different reports, different assumptions. Many of you on the call, I think, this is general interest for you, so you may be in the position to be helping other people run these numbers and do some of this analysis. So you want to keep track of your assumptions because you may be doing different scenarios. So the next thing are the monthly expenses, number of employees, any cell you can integrate, you can change those values. And again, don't think of the values that are pre-populated in there. Those are not correct in any way. Those are just to give you something to start with. So then at the very end, you update. And now it's very important that you have to do this. This sends the data to the database. So if something happens while you're doing this and you don't hit update, you won't have any of that data saved. And it does take a little bit of time for that to go. And then once that goes, you can see these cells here are spinning. And basically all of this information here doesn't mean anything to you. It's kind of an interim step. So these numbers will be returned, but all you need to do is scroll down to the bottom of this page and hit update again. Don't worry about any of this. It's just an interim step. You have to get that back and then hit update one more time. Now, the second time you hit update, it seems like it takes longer than the first time. And this is really when you go get a cup of coffee, because it does take some time, and that's just the way it is. But it'll go eventually. Wait for it. So we do want your expectation to be set for this. It just takes some time for that to get through. Now, at the end, you have 4 reports that you can print or save. So the project information report, this has all of that, all the project details that you have put in, all the variables and stuff that you have put in, plus some of the calculated values will be in this project details. So then another one is the pro forma balance sheet, and that's the one showing here. Now, you may want to print this out. So in your browser, you should be able to save it or print it as a PDF. And so that's what you do. And then just print that. And so do that for all 4 of those. This we've changed just a little bit, and I'll go back to tell you about how to log out in just a minute. But at this point, you're finished. You can come back later and update your project by clicking on that Update Project button. And I think is that the end of the video, Haley?
Yep.
Okay. So on the update for the project, it will take you back to what you previously entered. So if you want to save, if you want to do some iterations, like say, you know, we may be paid for to take the municipal yard waste, or we may have to pay to get the municipal yard waste, and you want to do some of those kinds of things, you could either make different projects with those different assumptions, and you may want to even note some of those assumptions in that section where we talked about noting any project assumptions. Or you could just update the same project if almost all your information is staying the same, and then you just save the report as a different file name. So however you want to do that. So let's go to the next slide, please. And I just wanted to point out that we have moved this log out information down to the home page of this website. And so you can log out there on the home page. So across the top, we have all these different pieces where you can click on home, start here, create a project, update a project, reports, and frequently asked questions is the last one. And so this log out information is now on the home page on the phone. Okay, one more thing here. So back to the Nebraska Recycling Council's project page. There is another little spreadsheet there that I want to show you, and that's highlighted here in the red circle. And this is the one that will show you the plant available nitrogen. So we've talked a little bit about organic nitrogen, and the plant available nitrogen is based on the mineralization rate, which you may or may not know, and the mineralization rate can vary even for the same soil depending on weather. So it's kind of an estimate. But this tool will give you some information that you can use. So you can, these gold, there's 2 tabs on this spreadsheet. It's a Google spreadsheet, so you can just download it, save a copy of it, and then you can use it for yourself. You can put in how much area you're going to cover and the depth of the compost. And then from the testing of the compost, you'll know the bulk density, the percent moisture, and the nitrogen content. And then you can estimate the mineralization rate. And then if you go to the next slide, the second tab of this spreadsheet would then return the compost volume, cubic yards you'll need per acre, the tons of dry compost applied, and the tons of as-is or moist compost applied per acre, the nitrogen content, and the pounds of nitrogen per acre. And then in this box, you see the plant available nitrogen. So the first season, you would have this much nitrogen available to the plant, the second season and the third season, all from that single application compost. So that's information for you to have to help you know how to sell the compost on the plant available nitrogen basis. And that's all I have.
Perfect, Jean. Thank you. And like she was saying, you can find all of this on the website, and the webinar will be uploaded afterwards, so you'll be able to refer back to it to use the tools. We have one quick poll question. Allison, if you want to throw that up quick. I know we're running a little tight with time, so.
Our last question today is, are you interested in exploring the financing of a feedlot municipal organics composting business? Okay, here are the results of that last one. They're evenly split. 33% said yes to know what it would take to profit, 33% yes to share with municipal leadership, and 33% no, don't see a need at this time.
Okay. Great information. Oh, briefly, I just wanted to mention that the USCC Nebraska chapter was part of the initial phases of this grant. It's been dormant for some time, the council has, but we're working diligently to get it up and running again. So if anyone on the call is interested in being part of this, please reach out to me. And like we were saying, all of the information today will be discussed and shared on our website. If we have, I guess I could pull up the questions quick. We have a couple minutes. Okay, someone said my internet froze. What did I miss? Okay, so the webinar will be, the recording will be posted on the website, so you'll be able to see anything that you missed. Allison, I'm having trouble seeing the other questions, if there was any other ones.
Sure, I'll read them to you, so at least the people that are present may get their questions answered. So this is a question for Kyle, I think. Jean asked, Kyle mentioned that farmers reduced the number of times they used their center pivots to water the crop with the test plots. Have you estimated the energy and water savings when composted manure and wood chips are applied? Kyle, do you have an answer to that question?
Maybe not an exact answer, but yeah.
Or
that's
a
a good question.
idea?
Brittany Bolte, an agronomist out of Rock County, Nebraska, put together a fairly substantial review of all those soil moisture probes after the year. And there is an advantage of just a pure compost in soil moisture retention, water retention. It's not as good as the wood chips, but there is, I don't have an exact number for you, especially on those, just those test plots there. There is some water holding ability, obviously, within that compost application. And so I can get that link pulled up if there's somebody that wants to look through the results of those soil moisture probes.
Yeah, if you want to drop it in the chat.
Yeah,
Or even if you want to send it to me later on to post on the website.
I'll send it to you, Haley, and then you guys can share it with the group. It's pretty interesting.
Great.
Do you want another question?
Sure, let's do one more, and then if there's
Okay.
more, we can just try to answer them after.
Sure.
I know we're running a little over.
One more question. Joey, would you say knowledge and awareness doesn't mean behavior change yet? It can in select areas. For example, renter education's effect on eviction rates. What domains have you reviewed that lead you to that slide creation? I can read it again if that wasn't clear.
Yeah, so knowledge and awareness just can't be the only thing. So there are various behaviors that knowledge awareness is a precursor that needs to happen before behavior can change. So a good example is recycling and the curbside. You need to know what you can put in the bin, but by itself, just knowing what you can put in the bin doesn't necessarily mean that it will translate into behavior change. So there needs to be more. So you could tell people jars are recyclable, but peanut butter, are you supposed to wash it, scrape it? What do you do with it? So there needs to be more than that. And if it is something that people have an issue with, addressing it by giving them the tools to deal with it. So like a rubber scraper to help them take that out. So it varies by behavior. It's important, absolutely, but it just can't be the only thing.
And we see that with other projects that we have, like the grain bag recycling. Okay.
Haley, we have one question for Aaron. Do you want to do one more? Is that okay?
If that's, yeah.
Okay. Most feedlot operations land apply their manure to their croplands. How does application of finished compost increase soil health when compared to manure only application? Is compost application the same benefits as manure only, or are there improved benefits to soil health when applying compost compared to manure only?
Aaron, I can't hear you.
Aaron, try it. It's a buzz.
How's that? Is that better?
Yep.
So thanks a lot for the question. I really appreciate it. And I think it's a pretty advanced question, to be honest. And so the use of manure has immediate return on investment. There's obviously fertilizer benefits from that. Mature compost is typically really low in kind of the fertilizer properties. And so the main benefits of applying compost are different than manure. We're seeking a biological primer. It's sort of applying the essence of life, and it kind of promotes the immediate building of a community, whereas manure can be pretty volatile. It can result in pretty wild dynamics of the population of the organisms in the soil. It can benefit bacteria predominantly. And so it can be really productive, but not so beneficial to sustainable or regenerative changes to the soil community.
Long term.
So yeah, so that's the most basic explanation I could provide. I'm not an expert on the differences by any means, but that's what I've heard other people talk about generally. And I would say those are the things that we're trying to learn about with UNL and promote through research projects like the one in the Middle Niobrara and elsewhere. So stay tuned and just find those answers from subject matter experts. And let me know if you have any other thoughts or concerns about that.
Yeah, and I think part of like the idea of this project was to improve the use of compost, but additionally have a way to use the municipal yard waste and manure as, you know, those undesirable outputs of material and create something that was more beneficial than compost. So it was the idea of using municipal waste also.
Yeah, it's taking two waste products or something that can't be applied near a municipality. So
Right.
say there's some neighbors that don't want the smell. Compost is way less volatile for smell, and so you could still benefit the soil in those areas with a different product.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Erin. Okay, I think we should probably wrap up. We're 5 minutes over now, but I really appreciate everyone's participation and attendance today. And I'll just say one last time, everything that was discussed today will be found on our website. And if there's additional questions or you just want to discuss anything we talked about more in depth, there's my information right there on the slide. And I'll be happy to chat with anybody. So I think we're good to close out. Allison, is that me?